very much, Madam Speaker. Well, first, I just want to take the opportunity to welcome Duncan Vendetti to Parliament Hill today. Duncan is a grade 6 student from Our Lady of Lourdes School in Kingston, and there's no doubt, Madam Speaker, mark my words, he will one day be sitting in this House. I'm sure he'll be on this side of the aisle, but good news for my Conservative colleagues. I'm sure they'll get along much better with Duncan than they do with me. In terms of the battery manufacturing plant, you know, this is a great example of how this piece of legislation lends itself to the minister being able to establish and bring new relationships to Canada, just like he has done by bringing to Canada the Umicore project, which will set up the largest electric vehicle battery manufacturing plant in North America, right outside of my riding in Hastings, Lennox and Addington. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Resuming debate, the honourable member for Davenport.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. Honourable colleagues, I'm pleased to rise today to speak on behalf of the residents of Davenport in support of Bill C-34, an act to amend the Investment Canada Act. The Investment Act of Canada, for those who may not know, is designed to encourage investment, economic growth and employment in Canada. It is a very important act for our federal government because as we continue to try to create a stronger culture of innovation in Canada, as our economy moves increasingly from tangibles to intangible or non-physical assets, as intellectual property becomes more important, and as we work to define the freedom to operate rules in Canada, acts like the Investment Act of Canada are very, very important. It's also an act, Madam Speaker, that provides mechanisms to review foreign investment in Canada to ensure that foreign investment is a net benefit to Canada and does not harm national security. The rules in the Act are established to provide investor certainty while giving Canada the ability to block individual investments under specific circumstances. So, Madam Speaker, this Act is critical to ensure a prosperous economic future for Canada and to guide the right type of investments in our country. So let's review some of the key changes that are being proposed by Bill C-34 to the Investment Canada Act. And I'll tell you, Madam Speaker, it's not the first time we've made changes to this Act, but it is probably the largest set of amendments that we have proposed since 2009. So the first thing it does is it introduces a pre-implementation filing requirement for specific investments. This will give the Canadian government more tools to review any proposed investments in sensitive business sectors. It would also give the authority for our Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, in consultation with our Minister of Public Safety, to order further national security reviews of investments. It updates penalties to strengthen deterrence of any behaviors that we may not want. It introduces the authority for the Minister of Industry, again in consultation with the Minister of Public Safety, to impose interim conditions on an investment to reduce the risk of national security injury taking place during the course of the review itself, such as through the possible transfer of assets, intellectual property, or trade secrets before the review is complete. Fifth, Madam Speaker, the Act provides greater flexibility in mitigating national security risks by allowing the Minister of Innovation, in collaboration with the Minister of Public Safety, to impose binding undertakings on investors. And these undertakings would have to demonstrate that they adequately mitigate the national security risks that would arise from the investment in question. Finally, the bill would allow Canada to share case-specific information with international counterparts to help protect common security interests. So, Madam Speaker, the Investment Canada Act not only sets out the rules that will encourage more investment and trade in Canada, but it also includes a number of measures that serves to protect any investments, foreign-made investments that are made in Canada as well. So, Madam Speaker, the economy is changing, the global trade and investment environment is changing, and so must our rules, legislations, and regulations to ensure that Canada is able to attract the best foreign investments and trade that will encourage economic growth, innovation, and employment opportunities in Canada, while also protecting Canada's national security and interests as it relates to trade and foreign investments. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is not the first time that our Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry has updated the Investment Canada Act. He has done so at least 3 times over the last couple of years. The first in March 2021, It was updated he updated the national security guidelines in light of the then evolving national security concerns to include investments involving sensitive personal data, sensitive technologies, and critical minerals, as well as investments by state-owned or state-influenced investors. The second time we adjusted it, our federal government acted again in February 2022, when Russia began its unprovoked and illegal attacks against Ukraine, creating an environment of heightened national security and economic risks. At that time, Madam Speaker, we put out a policy advising clearly that any investment with ties to Russia will only be found to be of net benefit to Canada on an exceptional basis. Moreover, any foreign investments with ties to the Russian state will also be viewed as potentially harmful to Canada's national security. And finally, a third time that we've updated the Investment Canada Act is when the federal government announced a new policy related to foreign investment in Canadian critical mineral sectors. The policy advised that any investment by state-influenced investors in the critical mineral sector will only be approved as being a net benefit to Canada on an exceptional basis, and then we took quick action to block transactions that would be injurious to Canada's national security, and the government ordered the divestiture of investments by 3 foreign companies in Canadian critical mineral companies. So this announcement was a change in procedure, and it's also part of our efforts to modernize and improve the administration of Canada's investment review regime. So despite previously having the authority to announce decisions of this nature, the Government of Canada had traditionally not done so. So again, Madam Speaker, not the first time of updating the Investment Canada Act. Indeed, this bill is the latest in a series of actions our government has taken to ensure that we have the right tools and flexibility to protect Canada's national security interest. And in turn, I believe that this will ensure an investment climate in Canada that's positive for economic growth, both now and in the future. Let me take a moment to relay some of the great investments that we have already made in the area of innovation, of science, of technology, with an eye to the future, Madam Speaker. And for me, these are the types of investments that absolutely sets Canada up for success, both now and in the future. In late January 2023, the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, he announced an investment of $100 million through the strategic...
Point of order, the honourable member for South Shore St. Margaret's.
This bill is about foreign direct investment in Canada. It's not about providing subsidies to foreign companies to operate battery plants. So I would ask the member if she would stick.
Just remind the honourable member that there is some latitude during speeches, and I'm sure that the honourable member will come back to the original bill that's before the House. The honourable member for Davenport.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. I was talking about and highlighting some of the great investments that we have already made that are innovative and very much sets Canada up and Canadians up for success. So I talked about at the end of January 2023, the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry announced an investment of $100 million through the Strategic Innovation Fund to support Saskatchewan's BHP $7.5 billion project to develop its world-leading low-emissions potash fund. This innovation, to me, is one of the many, many investments that we are making that's going to help to make sure that we will be reaching our net zero targets by 2050. In mid-January of this year, our Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry announced the launch of Canada's National Quantum Strategy, which will shape the future of quantum technologies in Canada and help create thousands of jobs. It's an investment of $360 million, and the strategy will amplify Canada's existing quantum research and grow quantum technologies, companies, and talent. And then just another couple of things that I'm really proud that we've done. Our Minister of Innovation has also signed MOUs with Volkswagen to investigate opportunities for Canada to contribute to Volkswagen's global and regional battery supply chains, which will be of mutual benefit to both of our countries and will advance our respective EV and energy agendas. And another great MOU I want to point out is the one we signed with Mercedes-Benz to look at opportunities, to promote cooperation, and to explore ways to advance opportunities across Canada's electric vehicle supply chain, including but not limited to securing sustainable sources of raw materials moving forward. So I know that we are running out of time, but maybe I'll just mention one more thing that I'm very proud of is in 2019 we set up the Innovation Asset Collective, which is a $30 million pilot that very much helps Canadian clean tech companies harness the value and power of the IP to maximize the value of their intangible assets and set the stage.
Point of order, the honourable member Calgary Rocky Ridge.
I hate to have to do this, Madam Speaker, but in the time since you ruled on the previous point of order, we haven't had any connection yet to the bill. So perhaps through you, we could remind her to tie this to the bill, because we're actually talking about Bill C-34, not a laundry list of funding announcements by the government that have nothing to do with the bill.
Again, there is a bit of latitude, but the honourable member is correct. I would want to remind those who are doing speeches today, who are speaking on this, that they should be referencing the bill and mentioning maybe the bill during their allocation. So the honourable member for Davenport has 30 seconds to continue.
Oh, I thought I had a minute left, Madam Speaker, but I will say that for all the reasons that I just want to state to everyone who had talked about a point of order, I very much outlined exactly what the bill is meant to do and why it's important to be part of the Investment Canada Act, and why it's so important for both current and future economic success for Canada. So what I'd like to say is, Madam Speaker, as we create a culture around intellectual property, as we work to translate invention to innovation, as we work to educate and protect IP generated from R&D investment, as we continue to encourage a need for an investment and trade in Canada, it's important to modernize our Investment Canada Act for the good of our economy, for jobs, for current and future prosperity, and to protect our national security interests. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Fortunately, yeah. So the honourable member's time is up. The honourable member for South Shore St. Margaret's under questions and comments.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The first half of the member's speech was a bit on this bill. The last half obviously wasn't. I would like to ask the member this. In 2017, she's a member of a government that sent a letter to a company in BC to say it's okay to be bought by a state-owned enterprise. The Minister of Industry said that from China. In 2019, the minister did it. That company, by the way, was called Hytera from China. In 2019, this government didn't even do a national security review of that or of the acquisition of our only lithium mine called Tanco in Manitoba. So I'd like the member to please enlighten this House with their extensive reading of the bill. Which clause in this bill will stop that from happening in the future?
Before I go to the honourable member's answer, I just need to read this. À l'ordre, conformément à l'article 30.
Pursuant to Standing Order 38, it is my duty to inform the House of the questions to be raised at the adjournment tonight.
Climate change, the honourable member for Kitchener Centre, Health, and the honourable member for Nunavut, Indigenous Affairs. The honourable member for Davenport can respond to the honourable member's question.
Speaker, and I want to thank the honourable member for his question. I will say to you that the changes that are being proposed to the Investment Canada Act will provide more flexibility and agility to our minister to be able to make these types of decisions in the future. I will also say to you that my understanding is that he's always advised by our national security advisors, and so we will always be taking direction from those who provide us advice, and that's the reason we're also here, is we're constantly modernizing our act to make sure that the national security interests of Canada continue to be protected. Thank you.
Questions and comments? Honorable député de Rimouski, Nejet,
The honourable member for Rimouski, Nejet, Témiscouata-les-Basques. No.
Député de Pierre Boucher.
Oh, the honourable member for Pierre Boucher, les Patriotes Percheurs. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank the colleague across for her interesting speech, but what's unfortunate is that there is a major problem in C-34, and I don't understand why the government has not taken action on this. It had an opportunity to modernize the Investment Canada Act and to look at matters of national security. That's great, but there's also another aspect, analyzing the threshold that goes from $1.3 and $1.9 billion before an investment analysis is carried out of net benefits. And doesn't my colleague think that it's a shame not to look at investments under that threshold?
I want to thank the honourable member for his excellent question. Thank you so much. Look, as I mentioned before, the Investment Canada Act provides for both the net benefit and national security reviews of foreign investments into Canada. We have proposed a number of changes in this particular act. This assuming it passes second reading in this House and it goes to committee, there's many opportunities to be able to consider other amendments that might strengthen this bill. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Comments? The honourable member for South Okanagan, West Kootenay.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to thank the member for her speech. But one of the concerns I have and the NDP has about this bill is that we should be looking more closely at transactions where a company is being taken over by a state-owned enterprise. A lot of the member from South Shore St. Margaret's mentioned Chinese investments. We had a case in British Columbia where Anbang Insurance bought Retirement Concepts, a local British Columbia a company that operates long-term care facilities in BC. That company was then taken over by the Chinese government, and yet there's no automatic trigger for an analysis there. And I think